It's a way of enhancing your projects. This is basically the 4 steps. That's a single cut, double cut, step 2, then you go to step 3 and step 4. And they all have to be pretty accurate. The main things of doing a Celtic knot, you have to start out with a perfectly square piece of wood, perfectly flat ends, and whatever saw you use to cut the wood with, the kerf on that saw is what the width of the filler pieces have to be. If they deviate in any way, after you glue the first piece in, you're fine. Then when you go to cut that second one, if the spacing is off, that first one now loses its orientation. So if you want to come out with a square, true Celtic knot, every piece has got to be the same thickness. What I do is I have a block, and I either use my chop saw here or a bandsaw. If I'm going to do a pen, I'll use the bandsaw. That's a pretty thin kerf, and you can do them on a bandsaw, no trouble. Or if you have a table saw, which I don't have at the house, for a wide one, you can use that. But I take my pieces and I shave them down through a sander until I get them to where they just fit right in there. These are all, each one of these is ready to go in there. They're just a perfect fit. So when I get through, hopefully it'll be a perfect Celtic knot. And also when you turn it, when you put it in a lathe, you've got to be centered. If you're off-centered a little bit, it's gone. It's off. It's not going to work. So it's precision from the get-go. As soon as you start, everything you do, you cut block, it's got to be set up to where nobody comes around and changes your saw. Every time you make a cut, you want to put it up against your stock, make your cut, take it out, glue it all together, and then put it back in and make your next cut. There's several schools of thought on these. If you go online to YouTube and look at how people are doing this, a lot of people will cut all the way down to the bottom and leave about 1/8 of an inch at the bottom. And then they stick this in and glue it and stick it in. I've not had any luck with that, because if you make these the right width, you're going to squeeze out most of your glue. You just don't get a good glue joint. I think that's what I did with this here. And you can see that I do have some separation there. Also, this one here, you can see that it's coming apart. This was done with CA glue. I found out that's not the best way to go. Use a white glue, or tonight we're going to experiment with this new product called Nexabond. I've been reading about it. I picked this up. It's supposed to be a really good wood glue. Although it is CA glue, it is designed for wood. And I watched some of the videos online and the testing that they put this through, and it really worked well. Any of you that are into segmented turning, this should solve a lot of the problems that you have with segmented turning, holding your pieces together in a timely fashion. So we're going to know tonight how this works.
What's the name of it?
Nexabond.
Nexa.
Nexabond. Woodcraft now handles it. I bought this up there this weekend. The object tonight is to really show you how to make a Celtic knot, whether it comes out perfect or not. I've been playing with it for several months, and I still screw it up. You know, it's very easy to do. So, but persevere. But you'll enjoy doing it. I've done it to pens, and like that pen right there, I made it a thick one. But really and truly, this one here didn't come out that well because it was too thick. You can actually use it. I'm playing around with it now. I've got little copper discs, and 2 copper discs stuck together equals my same thing as my kerf on my bandsaw. So I'm going to be doing making some pens with copper discs in them and try that. I think it's going to look real nice. But right now we're going to go ahead and try to turn a goblet tonight. It'll be similar to this one here.
Joe, I've got a question
Sure.
for you. Where do you get the little insert piece, the thin piece? Do you make that
Piece
yourself?
here, yeah. I resaw a piece of, this was a piece of walnut. I resawed it, and we have a drum sander, a thickness sander, and I just run it through it, and every time I check it, and when I got it where I wanted it, then I stopped it. And then I went in and I brushed up all the corners so I didn't have any burrs on them, and made sure that everything was good and flat. And when I put it in there, it's going to stay in there.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the hardest part, is really getting your filler pieces to match your saw kerf. So if you change blades on your saw, you better redo it. Actually, I find this blade here, this is a cheap saw, the $100 saw, but it does a good cut. If the blade is not an expensive blade, but it does a beautiful job, and this is a good clean cut. That's the first cut. It's pretty clean. It really is. For that cheap blade, it really does a nice job. Now, what I do is I've got a block here, perfectly 90 degrees. The first one I made, I took a piece of 2x6 or 2x4, and I cut it. And it wasn't too good because it just, in time, it just bent. So you really need a good piece of plywood on the bottom and a piece of hardwood on the top, and it'll maintain that 90 degrees for you. When I put it in the block, I put it in this way here, and I clamp it down, and I glue it. And I put this one here in, and I put it to where when I pull them together, it's going to tighten up. It's not going to push this one out or anything. It's going to be clamped in very well. So let's get started. What I like to do is set her down and put this right down to the bottom. Now, bear in mind when you cut these, this is going to be turned around, so you can actually undercut these a little bit. They don't have to be the full size, but I do like to set it down on the bottom here and rest it. It gives you a good solid surface for it.
How long are you going to have to leave it clamped for?
Set 5 minutes according to the instructions. About 5 minutes it should be set.
Huh.
So that's why I'm trying this stuff. I guess we'll know here in a little bit. We're going to have some dead time between cuts on this thing, so if you have any questions, Wally would be glad to answer any of them.
Why does the insert have to be the same as the saw?
Well, I worked that out in my head too, Ed. What happens is when you cut this and you make your first cut, now you come along and you make your second cut. If it's a different width, you no longer have alignment on the first two. It's going to be bigger, wider, so the first two are not going to match. They're going to be this way or this way on that first piece. Once you cut through that next piece, if you change the width of that, you've now changed the relationship of this piece. It's going to be one way or the other. And in order to maintain that same alignment, it has to be the same identical width. I had to prove that to myself. I wouldn't buy it. I said, if you start out with the same stock, it should be the same. And I finally realized what was going wrong, and I really exaggerated. I went with use some really wide ones and mixed it with some really thin ones, and it just don't work.
I realize they all have to be the same.
Yeah, they all have to be the same, but they could be all thin or all fat. But they all have to be the same.
You cut through the thing every time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if you don't replace it with the like amount of product, you're going to be off. Your alignment's going to be off. And what happens is every time you do it, it gets progressively worse. By the time you're all through with it, you're way off. So,
That's because you measure it from the end.
yes.
Joe, what do you got your miter saw set at? 45?
This one here is right at 25.
Oh, 25.
Yeah, you can do it anything. Just once you set it, just leave it there. Don't change it. That's what I tried to do, is to just take a board and just kind of get any of the rough stuff off it. Okay, hopefully they stay together.
These are the hardest darn things to get the dust. We go to great big box in the shop and around the flash. It's just hard to get it.
Question for you, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Why the gap in the back brace on your jig, your squaring jig?
Oh, it's just a glue relief place, and if I don't use wax paper, and like for pens and things like that, it really helps to give it a little bit of a relief.
Okay.
If the wood is sticking out a little bit, it won't affect the alignment of it. It'll be in that channel.
Okay.
This is actually a little bit too wide to fit in the channel. I'd make the channel wider, but for smaller things, it would work fine.
I did this all one piece. Yeah, that's what I was noticing.
There's one guy that does these. He actually goes as far as to making sure that the grain of these pieces here match the grain on how you're doing it in here. That way you don't get any difference during the drying process or anything. But I've not found it to matter that much. But otherwise, you'd have to have two going grain this way, and you'd have to make them bigger to go with the grain.
I did one like that with plastic.
Next to them.
I thought that was an EXA, I think it is.
It's supposed to be more elastic than C8. We designed for wood.
We buy from CPA tin and ranch.
Number 3.
Cheap. You get 16 ounces for it. There's a lot of tournaments,
It wouldn't have much pot life, I wouldn't think, would you?
No, it doesn't. I keep it in the fridge at home. Yeah. Makes it last a lot longer. Doesn't evaporate, and doesn't draw water and so forth. Yeah, I can freeze it if you want to. The weeds so fast, I just keep it in the fridge.
You'd be in trouble with the life.
It could cause a little giant
That's a real funny story. It's only one line. Rob the bum.
Yeah.
We were out of town.
We went to Kansas City. Professional.
They would interest out there and they sort of run up and down the tree. So then they can change on there. They can go for something.
Last cut. No more sawdust.
More CA.
3 bags full.
And I had
This is the discouraging part.
yeah.
It's just like,
That's like
with dirt, it's the same thing.
It was a trail.
So then you go do this one day, and then 2 weeks.
I didn't know that. your film. Yeah, right, because the wood was dry on the inside, it wasn't outside.
Yeah, and that's me.
Oh, my, oh, yeah, 142. And that's why it tastes hard.
Fast and slick.
Too hot and too dry.
So if you would add moisture instead of pouring it out,
My system is too hot.
As long as don't baby this, but I'm afraid that baby really don't for me.
Looks like you got a nice one there, Joe.
What's that?
Looks like you got a
That's a nice one. You ever want to look at it while I get rigged up here?
He was gonna show me in the account. Okay. Where's the exhibit A?
This is the next one.
Wouldn't care.
Definitely fun hunt.
Yeah.
Morning came out really good. Sometimes it irritates my nose too.
Go to jail or go?